conversation. And of course, the conversation is on the first year of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. Just a reminder that we started this conversation since on Monday, and of course, yesterday we took on the Ministry of Tourism. But today we're going to look at having, a general perspective on, of course, just to match, metrics against the 8-point agenda of Mr. President in diverse fields. But before we begin our conversation proper, our guest already seated, let's listen to our correspondent Abdulsalam Jubril's background report on this.
My love for this nation is abiding.
Precisely on May 29, 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took the oath of office as the 16th president of Nigeria and 5th democratically elected president since 1999. Renewed Hope Agenda is the mantra of the president's administration, promising to do things different, and some experts maintain that he made good on the promise by swiftly taking the necessary steps towards success. They insist that upon taking over office, it was evident that the president had inherited a significant economic crisis. With his leadership style for implementing bold reforms, it was no surprise when the president announced the removal of fuel subsidies in his inaugural speech.
The fuel subsidy is gone.
While some Nigerians agreed that it had become necessary for the removal, others contend that its abrupt removal has drastically affected the economy and standard of living. The president later floated the naira to compete with the dollar as a means of stabilizing the currency volatility in the forex market. Some analysts have stressed that the president's unwavering determination, combined with the expertise of qualified economic advisors, are implementing suitable fiscal and monetary policies that are steadily reversing the negative economic trajectory inherited from the previous administration. The CBN, now under proactive leadership, have introduced strategies to stabilize the naira and enhance the country's foreign exchange rates. In the fight against corruption, the president has shown that individuals engaged in corrupt practices must face legal repercussions, regardless of who they are. Experts say collaborative efforts between the federal government, subnational levels, and security agencies have yielded remarkable enhancements in the internal security landscape, particularly in volatile areas of conflict and insurgency. In an effort to reduce the cost of governance and enhance efficiency within the federal service, the president recently indicated an interest of adopting the recommendations of the Orosaye report through the establishment of 3 funds that includes Presidential Conditional Grant Scheme, the FGN MSMEs Intervention Fund, and the FGN Manufacturing Sector Fund, totaling 200 billion naira, aims to provide assistance to businesses across Nigeria. Some Nigerians, however, insist that it isn't Uhuru yet, as certain challenges still abound in different sectors of the economy. Guest on the program will be examining the progress of the Tinubu administration in the first year, identify challenges, and profile recommendations that will take the country to greater heights.
Yeah, thank you, Abdulsalami, for that background report. And to discuss the first year of President Bola Tinubu administration, we have in the studio Dr. Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, is the Honorable Minister of State, Agriculture and Food Security. He was spokesman of the 8th Senate and Deputy Chief Whip in the 9th Senate. So, Honorable, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Also joining us on Good Morning Nigeria is Honorable Rosemary Ojo-Chenemi Oshikoya, former Kogi State Commissioner for Environment and Natural Resources, 2016 to 2017, and also former Commissioner for Education, Science and Technology, 2018 to 2019. and also is the Executive Director of Ladi Memorial Foundation, NGO initiator, and that is championing. She's championing. So, Honorable, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria as well.
Good morning, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, we have one more guest joining us via Zoom from Lagos. Vincent Umoesian is a legal practitioner and a member of the BOT of the APC Professionals Forum. Mr. Essien, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. This is a very special day.
Yeah, it is a special day indeed. Good morning to you. Now let's come back to the studio. And Dr. Abdullahi, you are the Honorable Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security. So let's start with you now. Tell us about the 1 year of this administration. What are the achievements, significant achievement of this administration so far, and some of the challenges?
Thank you very much. But permit me to say congratulations to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his vice, Senator Kashim Shettima, and members of the Federal Executive Council, and indeed Nigerians, for this 1 year anniversary. 1 year so special, so unique. And I'm grateful to Almighty God who gave us this privilege to be part of the team supporting President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as he delivers on his promise to Nigerians. I think we need to put some context here. The president has said in no mistaken times that he is here for good and to serve Nigerians with all his strength. And his vision is for a Nigeria that will be prosperous, a Nigeria that will be peaceful, a Nigeria that will be respected among community of nations. And so to do this, definitely from beginning, there was assessment, because you need to understand what you are dealing with. And that assessment was done leading to the renewed hope agenda, in which he has brought out 8 areas. And out of these 8 areas, for us in the agricultural sector, 4 are critical to us. Food security, and here again, let me also say that the president has said in no mistaken term also that he looks forward to a Nigeria where no man will go to bed hungry. And that is to guarantee food security. And that explains why he brought food security as a very top component of his agenda. The second is the issue of job creation and economic growth. And then we also have poverty alleviation. And we also have the aspect of access to capital and inclusivity of youth and women in every facet of our economic life. Now, the other aspects of anti-corruption and security are also very critical. But let me say here that for us to drive this very important mandate, you also recall that the president even changed the name of the Ministry of Agriculture, removing rural development, not because rural development is not important, because we still carry out the rural development function, but to say that food is the #1 and most important thing that every nation must guarantee its citizens. So we are now Federal Minister of Agriculture and Food Security. Now, when we came on board last year, August, what we did was to look at the situation on ground, what is available, where we are in our agriculture and food security system, and where we ought to be. So within that context, of course, we have designed and developed our own focal areas, because we need to understand that for you to drive a vision, you must have a pathway. And that pathway must be one that is clear, must be one that is achievable. And so in this area, first, we realized what our food staples. Here, based on the policy of the ministry, wheat, for example, is a very important component of our food staple, because when you look at bread, confectionery, and so many other things. And here, unfortunately, is one area also where we import massively. So, wheat, rice, maize, sorghum, soybean, cassava, millet, cowpea, all of this, and then you talk about the various horticultural products. So what we did is we started with the dry season farming because we realized Nigeria is blessed with a lot of water bodies. So we need to play focus on dry season farming. So last year we started with the wheat program along rice, maize, cassava in various locations. But the most important one is the wheat, where we targeted 120,000 hectares, and invariably we ended up with about 118.
Okay.
And I think you will have had some misinformation saying we injected. No. What we are saying is that arising from that 118,000 hectares of farmland that were cultivated across 15 states in the dry season that passed, we are able to introduce or inject value of the wheat grains that was produced was estimated to be that 309 billion we're talking about.
Honorable Minister, I know you want to go deeper into what you have done. We will get to that. We just want to have a general perspective of the 1 year.
So let me round up on this.
Okay.
So what I want to say here is that what we did in our ministry is to say that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is known for creating sustainable system. And for that reason, whatever we're going to do in the ministry should not be a flash in the pan.
I love that. I like sustainable system.
Okay? So what we are doing is looking at creating a system in the agricultural sector that we transform our agricultural system into one that is sustainable, one that is reliable, and one that can guarantee availability and affordability of food all year round.
Dr. Sabi,
this is what we need to, as that is the foundation we have laid.
Okay.
And I think in the course of discussion we can
I thank you for bringing this to sustainable system, and the things you've created not meant to be a flash in the pan. But again, let us look at the 1 year. I know usually people say 1 year is short a time. It's not enough to really gauge the performance of an administration, especially leadership in Nigeria, considering our dynamics and our complexity. But the president, when in his inauguration speech, said something very very fundamental, and I would like to ask you, Madam. He said, my administration will govern and not rule. What are your thoughts so far?
Interestingly, we were having this conversation on what would you say have been the strengths. 1 year, like you said, is a foundational year for every government. But foundational stones are also very important stones in every structure that you have. And for instance, if you cannot talk about reforming without having the mind that change will happen. So I love the fact that this is a result-oriented, it started with result-oriented performance appraisal system. For the first time, we are hearing that the government wants to benchmark itself.
Yes, with KPI.
Their ministries and a whole lot of all that. Coming from my background, I would like to say that that is a very way to go. We've agitated for that many years in coming. And then you looked at it again, it's like there's nothing you really can do without capital. And most times, these discussions in the past have always been about how much money government has spent. And then all that goes there. So when you talk about governance, you're beginning to talk about accountability. You're beginning to talk about transparency. You're beginning to talk about even starting with availability. And I love the fact that revenue generation in this government has been interesting. You remember about the time His Excellency took over, it was about 976 million, right? And then immediately after he takes over, allocation to states went to the tune of about 1.1 million. It has been consistent. And you see that consistency for me is the first place to start. That number one, allocation of allocation to states
allocation.
and the rest of them. It's not in any way hampered in the past. Before you hear it fluctuates, it nosedive, and that for me is the first set of governance. That you're not going to govern in a vacuum. You're going to do your bit. Why is that important? Because almost everything that every level of government has to do, education, for instance, is funded. Education is in concurrent budget. Everybody has their role to play. So if in the past you were not funding, speaking about state level, you're not funding education at secondary education level because you have no funds and because what comes from the federal is not there and you're not. But what accountability in the instance of this government, availability of resources from the federal, which has been, is that you've actually set the stage for, can we now monitor ourselves? If you said input is not part of the problem, then can we begin to go to an output and a result-based kind of performance appraisal, and not just appraising the federal at this instance. I think it's also getting the feedback from each of the individual states that if the federal is not owing you any kind of allocation, and if it has increased because of the removal of subsidies, as the case would have been, then we would have a conversation with every tier of government to say. And another part of this governance that we're talking about is the fact that local government administration has always been an issue. I know on the APC Professionals Forum, we've always had this conversation and this debate. You know, the government looks at itself from inside, because you cannot, if you're governing, you are saying that at this point in time, if I am ruling, I don't care what you do. But what I have seen in this government is what people would say, government is reversing itself. But no, government is listening to the people. For instance, you remember the cyber security levy that everybody screamed about? So when you have a government that is governing, the government is getting feedback, a sense of, this is government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So I need you to come into the platform with me. And I think this government has listened. There's also this conversation about what has not been working. I think the controversial Lawrence Sawyer report in its implementation is also another part that says, over the years, he didn't initiate that report. But over the years, there's been a lot of shying away from what it's more like who wants to bail the cat in what appears to be very difficult. And within this 1 year, we see that courage to engage this issue that has to be, number one, again, is the proliferation of too many institutions. And then even though there's a bit of conversation on whether the amended proposal, especially as relates to secondary education, which is very touchy for those of us in the education stakeholder, that federal have always subsidized every tier of education, but secondary education has not been one of those tiers. And so you will want to say that there's maybe needs to relook into some of those areas, because Secondary Education Commission should stay. There's been debates for and against, but most of the debates has favored that as much as we want to implement some of those ones, there are some others we want to take with a pinch of salt to ensure streamlining. So if you ask me, the elements of governance, like you would want to say, is a governing system would want to ensure that certain structures are in place. And within this year, we might not say we are there yet, but it's for a foundational year, these are bold things to begin to look about that we could say that this is...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your opening contribution there. It's government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So let's go to our Zoom guest, Mr. Essien. Let's get your own assessment of this for the 1 year administration of Tinubu's administration.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to walk in line with what the last speakers just said. One of the things that we looked forward to when Asiwaju was elected as president was based on the background, especially for those of us who've followed him deeply in his political antecedents and what he achieved in his previous office, was that we expected him to bring to the fore his personal conviction. I think this is the first time that we've had a president that has shown strong personal conviction. Someone who's prepared for this office, and he's shown it. He's been bold, he's been decisive. This is something that we haven't seen commonly, and this is something that we need to appreciate. Now, going for the first 1 year, what we've seen is that he's already started to put their policies for the first time that you can see are personal. One of the things that I like to bring out is the credit corp, Nigeria Credit Corp. This is something that he campaigned upon, and you know, a lot of leaders that we had in the past make general promises, but when you see a promise come from a particular candidate. So you look forward to see whether it was just campaign talk. But within 1 year, the credit card bill has been sent and been put in place, and it's actually established that cooperation with somebody who's, you can see, very technical. So you can see that he's driven in that area, because credit is something that we need to reform our economic space in terms of the way people purchase goods, maybe they buy houses or cars. It is a very, very important structural reform that is going on there in that space that people are not really putting an eye on. So those are the initial signs that I'm looking on. And again, of course, we know he was very bold when it came to removing the subsidy and trying to merge the multiple exchange rate system that was in place when he came. Though that brought a bit of challenge and difficulties in terms of repercussions, inflation, and all that. But that boldness, because a lot of every other president has basically campaigned on this. The last president said they were going to take out subsidy, but nobody had the real boldness to bite that bullet. So it's come with some pain, but there's going to be some gain. So I think that this 1 year, we haven't had a president that has shown this conviction and personal boldness and decisiveness in a long time. That's my view, and that is my takeaway from from what we've seen. And again, like the last speaker said, there's also a lot of feedback when the policy is rolled out, and the feedback from the population is that we're not in sync with this. The cybercrime bill was something that we can immediately refer to. You can see the response of government, that they're listening, they're in touch. And coming to the other arms of government, this, of course, one of the fallouts of the removal of fuel subsidy has been the expanded revenue that's available at all levels of government. Now, we have the state and the local government. One of the biggest challenges is that the local government system in Nigeria has become practically paralyzed. But in the last 2 weeks, the federal government has instituted an action at the Supreme Court against all the 36 states to ensure that finally the local governments have the financial autonomy that they require to impact on the people. Because you see, we need to have government impacting at all levels. And a lot of governments have just mounted this and tried to deal with this, but going about it in this decisive manner at the Supreme Court in a suit against all the 36 states seals the conviction of the government that we have in power today. And which is not a surprise, because he's been somebody that's always campaigned about true federalism. And this is actually one of the legs on which this has to stand. We need to have all the arms of government able to complement and play their roles in ensuring that we bring about this transformation. And I think this is in line with the renewed hope agenda. So I think so well and good. 1 year is still a very short period, but the initial signs are there. There are difficulties. Clearly, we are operating in a difficult economic space right now. And thankfully, the Minister of State for Agriculture is here. We have issues with food prices. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done. But clearly, the ability to face those challenges is not lacking. The ability to confront those challenges is not lacking. And that's why I think the positive takeaway I can see for 1 year. It's already, all the ministers throughout the last 2 weeks have been given an account of how they've done in their various areas. And this is something that is novel. And that feedback, which is open to everybody, will be a basis for the government to move forward. So I think that there are a lot of positive sides in this administration that we can take credit for.
Okay, Mr. Sian, thank you. And indeed, the platform for the ministerial sectorial scorecard actually started during the last administration. So it's a continuous thing, and it is interesting to see how the ministers comply very diligently too. to come to let Nigerians know what they've been doing. Let me come back to the studio. Dr. Sabi, I know you are a distinguished senator, so I'm just going to also take my question. I know you want to weigh in on this issue of governance and ruling, but also look at another aspect of the president's inauguration speech, where he made reference to our constitution and our laws as giving us a nation on paper. So, through policy reforms, have we seen, again, sustainable signs of turning this document, this very sacred document, into reality for Nigerians?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, like we have agreed, a good foundation has been laid. And I think, for me, one thing that we have realized in discharging our duty is that the commitment, the passion, the sincerity of purpose of Mr. President is never in doubt. He has said it times without number, I'm human, I make errors. Anything that is not right, point it out to me and I'm going to take action. Secondly, I've given you all the powers. Go to your sectors and help me to deliver on what I promised to Nigerians. Now, to look back at what you have said, I want to believe, first, you have to realize that you are dealing with human beings. And I think that realization points to the issues you've raised about a country on paper, which we must bring down so that people can begin to appreciate that this is our country. One area that I see that as significant is the dignity of every human being lies in the fact that he should not go hungry. A hungry man, they said, is an angry man. And I believe at the root of all of this is the reason why the president is giving us massive support in the agricultural sector to do all the things we need to do. And like I've said, we've laid a solid foundation. Going forward, we have a number of things we intend to do. We are bringing back so many things to ensure that Nigerians will begin to see the agricultural sector as where they can go and get very good job to do, get their wealth, because the wealth in the agricultural sector is more of a sustainable wealth. If you have a successful farm operation, that can keep repeating itself year on year. And there is nothing more sustainable than that. So I think we've realized this, and we want Nigerians to see that the agricultural sector agriculture itself should be seen as a business. Now, we also realize that many people will tell you the agriculture of hoe and cutlass is not exciting and it's not inviting.
Obviously not.
Yes, definitely. So, and the youth, who constitute about the majority of our population, 90-year-old is the average age of the greater majority of our population, which is more than 54%. So, if you look at all of this, you realize that you don't have to do those things that will invite and excite the youth. And we also have to guarantee that food is available. And that explains why when there was that food crisis late last year, coming into the first quarter of this year, there were a lot of measures that were approved and were taken. The strategic reserve, we had to go into it. 42,000 metric tons of assorted food was distributed. We also had to look at the various rice millers that are having stock. And here again, we had about 58,000 metric tons that was procured and distributed across the various, just to dampen the effect. But you see, agriculture is not something you do in a flash, and it has a season. So what we are trying to do in the Ministry of Agriculture, and which we have actually put our pedal on, is to say that all year-round farming should be guaranteed. So we are working massively on that, and we are cleaning the system also, because you cannot have a system that when you say you are talking about farmers, you don't even know who these farmers are. And you will remember many times we have been here to say, look, we want to take out the ghost farmers. We want to take out the portfolio farmers. We want genuine farmers. And so we are doing everything we can to make sure that we know where our farms are. Because if you know where your farms are, and you are targeting, for example, if you say 1 million hectares of farm, where are these 1 million hectares? What is this 1 million hectares going to do, for example? So this is where we are also making some changes to ensure that on a sustainable basis, Nigerians can be sure that, yes, our food system is working, and Nigerians will also get to know where their food is coming from.
Earlier on, you talked about the issue of Nigeria having the huge population of the youths and their interest in agriculture. Most of these youths are not interested in agriculture because of these traditional means of agriculture that we still practice. How do you begin to change their mindset now? Because most people are talking about mechanized, farming, deploying technology, to get the interest of the youth. So what are you doing in that line?
In this administration,
yes,
I will tell you, mechanization is a major component of the changes we are bringing. The current mechanization level in the country is about 0.027 horsepower per hectare. The African average is 1.7, and the best bet you can have is 2.5 horsepower per hectare. So we have programs that are right now in the works. We have a memorandum of understanding with John Deere, which is designed for us to have injection of 10,000 tractors and other, farm mechanization tools for the Nigerian farming ecosystem. And it will start with 2,000. And this 2,000, as we speak, we've been informed, 500 is already shipped and they are on the way to this country. Then we also have the Green Imperative program, which is about 900 plus, million euros. That program also is being worked on. It is designed to have mechanization, that is tractors, and at the same time, mechanization service centers across the 774 local government. Because in the past, when tractors are introduced and they are bad, you don't have service centers. Only some few people that you have trained here and there. So there is a new system that will come along with all of this, tractorization, projects that we're talking about. We also have the Greener Hope mechanization project, which is also similar, and is also going to bring in tractors, at the same time mechanization service centers. And here, when we talk about, we talk about tractors, there are ridges, there are what did they call it, planters, and there are also hand tillers. Now, I remember when we were discussing this in one forum, one young man said, Oga, please tell them that the tractor should come with AC so that I can wear tie while using, and I will tell you, all of the equipments we are talking about are modern. They come with electronic, and you can actually track performance and so many other things. So these are the things we are looking at. But also of note is the fact that there are new technologies in terms of how you produce hydroponics, green, that is greenhouses, and drip irrigation that comes along with all of this. These are the things we are looking at, and we are hoping in the course of time we are going to begin to have the youth. And in fact, let me say this. When people say the youth are no longer interested, I think that has changed. The youths are interested.
I agree.
And I have seen many youth programs. Just last week was, I think, 20th of May was World BD. And there are some young Nigerians that have formed themselves into, young B clubs, or they have an initiative, and their target is that the bee industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And they want Nigeria to participate so that at the end of the day, they will be able to also contribute to satisfying local demand, but at the same time also targeting local market, especially along the African continental free trade agreement.
Dr. Abdullahi, thank you. Before we bring in Madam, I also want to say each time we talk about mechanization and other factors, it will appear as if we are in agriculture. we are addressing the surface of the wound and not looking at, the wound itself. And for 4 consecutive periods, food items have driven our inflation. I'm sure you're aware of that. It is the main driver of our inflation as it is now. And it's not as if there is food scarcity. The indicators show that we have enough food items. And so it's not as if, yes, you're doing a lot to increase the food item to ensure that. And yet, the president said in that speech, and he was very emphatic, that look, one of the things this administration will do is to ensure that food is available and less costly, farmers earn more, and Nigerians pay less. So in the area of food prices, are you concerned? Are we doing anything to stabilize the prices? Like what the First Lady is doing. She's encouraging women. Hey, every woman should begin to grow, your own food in your own house. In your own house. So when you do that, you are addressing the issue.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, you are correct. And let me say this, that unfortunately agriculture is not operating in a vacuum. It's a major component of our economy. And when you look at the drivers of cost, the cost drivers within the space you are talking about, there are things that are external to us. But what we are doing is we are trying to address all of these things in a systematic manner, because we believe when prices go up due to external shocks, produce more. Because when you have more, definitely it is going to force down price in some ways. We know this is not happening very fast because the season is not within our control. During the dry season, I told you what we're able to do has helped to dampen and keep it in some steady form, even though you see it again suddenly going up, maybe as a result of some other shocks. And one of the key contributors here is transport costs. And you agree with me that based on the new policy that Mr. President has directed, the use of CNG, we are looking forward to when that now become massively available, because it will help to now drive down the cost. So you can see, while we are doing our own component, the other sectors also are trying their own component that has that, tangential responsibility to what we are doing. Because if you go to the market today and ask, they will tell you at the point of where they are purchasing this particular product, this is the cost.
Is there any reason why a basket of tomato is 150,000 naira against 40,000 naira?
Yes, you see, you have to interrogate that, and it is not going to be a one-off answer you get. Definitely not. But then let me say one thing. I'm happy you've noted the issue of wanting to have production. Now, with the new technology of hydroponics, greenhouse, if you are able to massively increase the opportunities available to us to produce not just tomato but many other horticultural products, it will help to bring down cost. And that is one of the things we are doing. In fact, this year we are also having a project that we're going to partner with the Office of the First Lady, based on that mantra of wanting to bring agriculture in that small, bit.
Yes,
because it helps.
Every home a garden.
Yes, it helps to contribute into, because any home that is able to produce what they are able to eat, they are not going to the market. So the pressure on demand in the market will be
reduced.
So I want to say very clearly that one thing about this government is whatever you are doing, you must take a holistic look at it. And collaboration, interagency collaboration, partnership, and working together is also one very critical success factor of how the president has directed all ministries to operate. And we are taking that very seriously. And not only that, we are also looking at all other subnationals down to the local government. Because for us in agriculture, that is where agriculture takes place. And in everything we are doing, even the grain we distributed in partnership with NEMA. So you can see the same element of partnership again. And they have a better logistical system, and we've worked with them. But in all, when you go down, you see everybody participating, because transparency is the hallmark of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullahi. Transparency is the hallmark of President Bola Tinubu. And we have said it, just like you said, that the president has been very decisive. The president listens to people and also get feedbacks as well. He's been able to take decisions that maybe his previous administration have not been bold enough to take. Let's look at the area of education now, which I know that it's your that's where your strength is. And I know that the president has spoken about the issue of reducing poverty, and also, to reduce poverty, you need to educate the people. You need to change their mindset. Let's look at the policy of this government in the area of education. How has it impacted positively on the economy of the nation?
Okay, thank you. To many of us on the social media, we would always see this thing they said was posted on the door of one university in South Africa. And the bottom line in all that summary is, if you want your people to be great, if you want to have a prosperous nation, you will need to pay attention, not just to education, but to quality education. President Ahmed Tinubu made a promise that resonates so very widely. He says that no Nigerian child will be excluded from quality education. And again, an education that prepares the girl and the woman to lead positive impacts within their communities. But you see, there's, for me, over the years in Nigeria, there's need to have this conversation that a lot of people treat education as an end in itself. In other words, I could go to school, I could learn to speak English, particularly because if you look at the history of education, the white people taught us to be able to do certain things. So education to a great extent has been dependent. But then if you look at functional, holistic education, education prepares you to be a functioning, fully integrated, productive member of your community. Nigerian policy on education. So we're talking about an egalitarian nation. We're talking about a people who are productive. We're talking about, and so if you look at it, and I think that is part of what I am hopeful we would see in the next years to build upon. That every policy His Excellency had made in his manifesto, for me, they all stop in education. One, look at the statistics of Nigeria. Predominant population of Nigeria are young adults, less than 30 years. And then increasingly, if you take that predominant position, look at another statistics the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics has put out. Majority of Nigerians are not well educated. In the basic terms, they cannot read and write. And so in the past and almost presently, most Nigerians still have the conception. If I teach you to read and write, your problem is solved. Far from it, your problem is not solved. Your basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter are still there. So if the basic need of man conceptually is food, clothing, and shelter, it means all efforts of government reduces into how every average Nigerian should do that. Now, if I have a population of Nigerian people who are predominantly young, unskilled, what is the whole essence of education? What is the whole essence of productivity? That I have enough knowledge and enough skills to survive and function as an individual. So if you look at that, it means that every Nigeria belongs to the education sector. If you look at that again, another statement of fact is that education is multidisciplinary. That is why education gives birth to every other profession. And in recent time, you notice that that has been an issue. We could be very taken over with the learning facilities. Another promise His Excellency made. Learning environments will be addressed. And so in recent time, we begin to see at the tertiary education, there's a lot of ongoing agitations and strike. We said, okay, teachers will be available. Well, let's leave the debate about the quality and the number of teachers. But the question again that comes to the table is the remuneration of teachers. The last government hinted at that. There's going to be pay packages that make teaching profession more appealing to the average Nigerian. And just recently, JAM told us the population of Nigerians that want to go into the teaching profession, again, has a bit of a comma. So I think the promises of His Excellency are clear. But how do we deliver on the promise? To deliver on that promise means every facet of the Nigeria education should pay attention to education. We just listen to Agric. When you look at food production, if most of my people are supposed to be in school, whatever the type of school you call it, basic education, secondary education, tertiary education, whether they are technical or non-technical, all they do in school is to acquire skills and competencies that should address all our human capital needs in as a country. At the same time, would the schools themselves become just dumping grounds for everything? Or schools themselves should generate revenue for itself? Now, when you say that at the other side, it gives a different connotation, because some would reinterpret that to mean government should no longer fund education because education should do that. But if you look at the national policy on education, it says that, now, let's agree that schools learn. And then if schools learn, you have an apprenticeship system that goes on in school. It means in school, at the basic conceptual one, I'm a home economics teacher. And the building disciplinary areas for home economics is garment making. And then I talk about cosmetology. I talk about food production, right? Food preparation and baking and the rest of them. And even agricultural science is a bit embedded into a bit of what we do. It means by Nigerian law, when a child finishes GSS3 at the age of 15, the child should have functional skills for livelihood. It means that child should be able to make garments for you. That child should be able to do a bit of masonry. But the artisan crafts in Nigeria have been dead. So when we talk about the need to pay more attention to education, it goes beyond just simply saying increase the budget, but begin to look. That's why I'm happy we're talking about a result-based output. That it means this government is then saying, how many functioning learning centers do we have? Not in terms of I build a simple classroom and I give it to a community. How many workshops do they have? And then you see every emphasis you are going to make on SMEs actually should go to the school. It will mean that with all the land size and the infrastructure in schools and workshop, the productivity of those schools, I think it is that one we are needing to see. That it's okay, we are paying a lot of attention to SMEs like the government is doing. But the intersectoral collaboration would mean that everybody begin to adopt the community existing facility. It's good investment for you to look at where you have assets. Okay. Every community has a school. And does every community have a workshop? Does every school has a farm? Does every young adult acquire all those skills? Do we incentivize them? And I give a practical one. Last year, the UNESCO supported for our NGO what we call the Pilot School Sewing Championship. And before that time, garment making in schools is not one of the home economics thing. Usually, when you talk of home economics, everybody talk of puff-puff and chin-chin. And then when you talk of women education, everybody talk about soap making. But then garment making becomes a bit more technical. That is a multiple trillion-dollar thing in the world, right? Industry. And countries like India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh make a whole lot of money. And most times when you talk of garments making or fashion, our attention simply goes out to people who are school dropouts. Our attention goes out to people who have fashion houses. But why didn't we think that the Nigerian students should do that? And so in the FCT, UNESCO supported that last year. And 1,096 young people between the age of 12 and 20 took part of that. Increasingly, after that incentive, thanks to Federal Ministry of Education and NASENI and the collaborating factor, you find that more schools in the FCT are now getting sewing machine. Let
me pause. Let me ask you to hold on, because I know you have more.
So much to say.
So much. Yes. Our correspondent Ignatius Unko is joining us from the National Assembly, and of course he has one or two information to pass to us. Ignatius Unko, thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria. What's happening? Are you able to sing the old national anthem yourself?
Good morning, Claire and Ademola. The old national anthem, is very moment from now. You don't have any option than to sing it. Thank you very much for joining me here at the National Assembly.
So what is happening? You just said any moment from now. What's the latest update about that?
Okay. Well, here at the National Assembly, there are features that we see here at the National Assembly. Whenever the president, the chief executive, is visiting the National Assembly, it's always a serious business. It's always a big visitor. So there are features that you see in the National Assembly when the president is visiting. And these are the features that people who are at the National Assembly look out for a sign that Mr. President is likely to visit. Well, this morning, when we came to the National Assembly, from the entrance to the precinct of the National Assembly, from the major gate that leads from the Secretariat, we discovered that strengthened security there. Entrance, there's stringent screening of entrance into the National Assembly. So these are one of the first basic features that we'll see when the president is bid to visit the National Assembly. So those features are at the moment they are on ground. And then there's another significant feature that we'll see, and on a day that Mr. President will be visiting the National Assembly. You know, the road that links the presidential villa and the National Assembly, we always see there's always a red carpet through which Mr. President will be entering. This morning, that red carpet is on ground. And then inside the chamber, we expect that there's going to be a joint session. And all the atmosphere, all the arrangements in the chamber of the House of Representatives, they're all in place. The sitting arrangement has been divided for guests, people who will be coming, and there are seats has been placed for Mr. President and the senators who will be coming from their own chamber. Because usually, when there's a joint session, the members of the Senate comes into the House of Representatives. Well, this is just basically because the House of Representative chamber is the biggest, has the biggest number of seats, and it could accommodate all the senators and House of Representative members. So from the look of things, well, here we are seeing all those features, all those basic features that is always in place when Mr. President is bid to visit the National Assembly. And well, major things too, there are some of the commercial activities in the National Assembly, like the banks and other business ventures. When Mr. President is visiting, they are prohibited from entering the National Assembly. And this morning, banks and other places are all closed. And then the members, staff of the National Assembly too, some of them are not expected to come into the National Assembly. So these are some of the basic features that we'll see on a day that Mr. President is bid to visit the National Assembly. So at the moment, Claire, I will tell you, the features are all in place.
Yeah. Okay, can you let us know what are the major things that we are expecting from this joint session today?
Session basically is to receive from the information we had is to receive the Mr. President who will be gracing and addressing members of the National Assembly, after which the National Assembly Library, which has been constructed, you know, is expected to be commissioned by Mr. President himself. So, you know, when the joint session is in place, it's expected that the major thing there is Mr. President will address members of the National Assembly. You know, this is a very significant. Whenever Mr. President is meeting with the members of the legislature, is a very serious issue. Is a very serious issue, and most times it's expected that issues of national importance will be discussed, will be raised, and some of the issues that some Nigerians expect that will be addressed. You know, you see, addressing members of the Parliament, this is the House of the Nigerian people. So whatever Mr. President is bid to tell members of the National Assembly, it's saying it to Nigerians in general, because these are the representatives of the Nigerian citizenry.
Ignatius, thank you. I just have one or two questions, and I'm wondering. Thank you for all the pictures that you know, indicators that you have given us. Of course, which give us an indication that yes, the president may, of course, visit the National Assembly. But have there been a time when those same pictures have been in place, and you know, the president, you know, didn't attend? That's one. And secondly, I don't know, is there any particular reason why the president is or should be addressing the National Assembly today?
Well, yeah, you see, there are some cases, I think once or so, that was, I think during the 8th Assembly, where the president was expected to come, but because of one or two reasons, and that period, basically, I think the president was out of the country, and I think something really happened, and he couldn't make it. So some of those features were still there. But, you know, this is the chief executive. Well, they just like you having a visitor, and you expect your visitor to come. All things being equal, you expect your visitor, you've made all your arrangements, and if eventually there's intervening variables that came up, and your visitor did not come, you were already waiting for him, and if he didn't come, I think it's something that happens as a natural phenomenon. So we expect that since all these features are on ground, we expect that if he didn't come, well, but the National Assembly, from the look of things, are all ready to receive Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Ignatius. Thank you for giving us an update. We'll be back later to get more update from you. Thank you very much. All right, so we come back to the studio, but before we proceed on, so that you can continue on your thoughts line, let's take this break. We'll be back. Stay with us.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, we turn dark into light, we make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, strengthening unity, we know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Meet lovebirds Jayola and Adama Davies. Their dream of living together as man and wife has finally been fulfilled.
The latest couple in town, Mr. and Mrs. Jaye Davies!
But an invasion by their troublesome families was not a scenario they bargained for. Her mother moves in. His mother shows up with his little niece. Then her younger sister joins the scramble.
You want to stay?
Married life suddenly becomes very complicated even before it started. Follow their story on this channel as they confront every challenge as it comes. Family forever, the story of our lives.
Nigeria means unity. Nigeria means freedom to me. Nigeria means greatness to me. Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible. As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress. Both tribes and tongues may differ. In brotherhood we stand. And it is the woman that does that.
It's been an uncommon year of public policy and governance to renew hope in Africa's largest democracy. Beginning May 27, join us on TV, online, and on mobile for a series of documentaries and live shows as we detail the hope, resilience, and progress of Nigeria in the last 1 year. Tune in as we make sense of Nigeria's paradigm shift in monetary and fiscal policies, death of the parasitic monster called subsidy, and boost in agriculture and food security. NTA.
Okay, you're welcome back. We are still on to Good Morning Nigeria, and we are assessing the one-year administration of President Tinubu. Claire, you wanted to continue with...
Yes, I wanted Honorable Rosemary to really speak to the nexus between education and skills acquisition. You know, over the weekend, the Her Excellency the First Lady had the program for the youths. You know, honoring the nation's youth. You know, becoming pathway to success. And of course, we had panel of very successful Nigerian youths, and they told their very inspiring stories. And a young student from the hall stood up to ask a question about the connection between going to school, education, and skills acquisition. And I'm asking you because I know what the answers they gave. So, is there a connection? Can we connect it? That's one. And then secondly, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu started the students' loan scheme as a way of boosting, access and encouraging students, to continue to school and all that. Now, what are your thoughts about that? Especially as we intend to improve the quality of education and also to give value to the kind of education that we give to our children.
Thank you. I asked a question, most times I ask myself. For the past 7 years, I've been advocating for technical vocational skills. And in terms of that, you were quick to get to find where I'm happy that the Honorable Minister talked about the need for connection, for the need for partnership collaborations, and the need for buy-in. But we also need to come to terms with Nigeria, we as Nigerians, that there's need for us to undergo personal, collective, and national paradigm shifts. One of the paradigm shifts, and surprisingly I've heard this from top people in government and even top civil servants across different sectors. They will tell you, allow the child go to school. Let him finish WAEC and pass very well. Skills acquisition in terms of functional vocational skills is a distraction. And when he finishes, he will go to one of the mass education centers in any of the states and he would learn how to cook. That is why the school is dysfunctional. Why do you think these schools we talk about pay a lot of money? Pick a typical school. Nigeria is ranking 124th in global appraisal of countries for education. I saw that in one of that, and it bothers me as at 2023. And then I know again, so you see, you look at this, in skills, how do you appraise education? The child learns skills, comprehension skills, leadership skills, communication skills. You acquire a whole lot of that skills. But one of the goals of education also is that you develop competencies in addition to knowledge. And then, the idea of entrepreneurial skills also come into it. If education is functional, the child will know how to fix a car. You remember simply we're told that some of these contraptions we buy from other countries, why your battery will die was because they are practical experiments from China and the rest of them. So until our schools begin to produce this output and this outcome, until it is no longer like, I was listening to His Honorable Minister and we are talking about importation of equipment. The thing is, Nigeria needs to grow a lot of money. We need to make this money from production of goods and services. And our schools are the incubation centers, whether tertiary and the rest of them. And it doesn't have to be technical school.
I have to interrupt you so that we can, we can also get the views of
Mr. Essien.
Yes, some critics have talked about Mr. President's student loan scheme.
Okay.
And yes, I would like you to speak to that. And what value do you think it will add to?
The student loan scheme is a good departure from bursary, because one, it places on the student, the learner, the responsibility for ownership. And then you find again, by the time you are 18, you're supposed to be a productive member of the community. And if everything goes well, at tertiary education, I've heard several arguments. Is tertiary education mandatory? Should you pay for it? Should you not? Basic education is free. And so that is why, for instance, the prelude to that, like one of the ES told me, is that you're talking about studentpreneurship. Studentpreneurship makes it possible for the young learner or the youth to begin to see that education means I am giving something back. So I can acquire education for myself. And that is why I think the student loan is important. In bursaries, government give these as grants. And whether you use it, you don't use it, it is not hinged. But
not accountable.
And some of us actually went through school paying our fees. I don't know about you. But for tertiary education, you work and you contribute. And the future of the student loan, I think we need to look into that. Part of the critique is whether the student loan is only available for people who go to tertiary, public schools, or whether it is open to every other one. And I think the payback system is when you combine studentpreneurship, my ability to earn money, self-employment, my ability to have the skills that I can be paid, then it also will strengthen that. And I think with that, I would like to applaud the Universal Basic Education Commission, because only very recently, particularly in the month of May, they launched this idea of the school to work scheme. And coming at basic education is one of the ways we need to strengthen it. Because if as at basic education, the child is acquiring that everything I learn in school, I can actually make profits from it. I can make basic garments and sell. I can make basic food. I can even do the work of a tiler, a plumber. I can begin to acquire skills. You see the connection I was talking about, every sector beginning to look at education, not as a standalone, but as a means to achieving all the ends. And then you find that if you adopt this, like the 3 million technical talents we are talking about, they are all in school. And so if you do that, you will find incentivizing it like the wife of the president is doing. Well, for instance, co-curricular activities, vocational skills, these are some of the drivers we need. And I would like to appreciate the First Lady of Nigeria for doing that. Because you find in school, once upon a time, they were governor's cups, right? Once upon a time, there were different awards. Just like we thank UNESCO and the Federal Ministry, we're talking about the National Sewing Championship. So when these incentives are there, you would find that Nigeria begin to look inward, and other ministries carry some of that budget and support what you do in schools, and then education becomes better.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You are so much. You are so passionate about education, and education is means to achieve all ends.
All ends. Yes.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Now let's join our Zoom guest, Mr. Essien, and let's look at the administration's stance on anti-corruption. What are the notable anti-corruption initiatives that have been implemented by this administration in the first year? Mr. Essien, can you?
Let him unmute
I think,
himself.
okay, I think
that
there is a network issue. Okay, I think it's frozen. Let's come back to the studio. Maybe when that issue is resolved. Okay, Mr. Essien.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd say that the first year in government for any administration is about building the blocks. You're not going to achieve all you need to achieve in any sector. We had all the other guests talking about agriculture and education. I'd like to touch as well on that. But basically, the first year is what this administration has been able to do in terms of building the blocks and showing its direction. So with regard to anti-corruption, of course, we know that the institutions to fight corruption are already in place in Nigeria. The legal system, the courts, the EFCC. This government came in place and immediately put reform in the EFCC, and we can see that today the EFCC has been positioned. I think a lot of people still have
well, I think we're having some issues with Mr. Essien's connection there. Let's come back to the studio now. And Dr. Abdullahi, you have been following the conversation so far, especially in regards to education being means to ends of everything that we have been talking about. Let's talk more about government's efforts in agriculture now, especially at engaging the youth, encouraging them, making agriculture more interesting to the youths. Tell us more about that.
Well, thank you very much. And I think I totally agree with the issue of making education more functional. In fact, recognizing this in the agricultural sector has made us to say we want to review the entire gamut of agricultural curriculum in the universities and colleges of agriculture and the like. And that is one of our major projects this year, in partnership with all the relevant agencies, the NUC, the MBTs, and all the others. We really want to take a look at the agricultural curriculum. And one fact about this is, just like she has said, we believe it's time for us to emphasize on competencies and skill set that will enable you to take production and begin to see the impact instantly. We have so many graduates, and many of these graduates end up not going into agriculture. We have people who are now interested in having farms. What are we doing about farm management? What are we doing about agricultural marketing? What are we doing about creating entrepreneurs in that sector, in that space? All of this will require a review of the curriculum. And I think that is one fact we are also looking at. Now, for us, we believe agriculture is something that can never cease to exist so long as human beings exist. Because you have to feed every mouth. Everybody must eat. And that food that you are going to eat has to be produced. So the value chain approach which we have taken is creating people along the value chain in terms of different competencies and different skills. For example, you go and produce. You are not interested in the output. After you have produced, you want somebody to take it and go into processing. Even in processing, you have semi-processed, where you put it in some form, so that from that, people who want to make food and other things can come and take. But remember also that agriculture provides also, products for agro-industries, raw materials. So we are looking at the entire gamut of things, and we are saying the youth need to come in and take a look at these opportunities, and the government is going to create the enablement. And I will give you one classical example. When you look at the livestock sector, one of the major constraints in the livestock sector is feed and fodder. And technologies are now emerging where you can actually create an industry around this. And so for the first time, Nigeria has taken this matter very seriously, because the president has a livestock transformation agenda also, that he wants all these incessant farmer-herder clashes can now be, taken care of. And so along this line, we have created what we call the multi-stakeholder platform for feed and fodder, towards creating a feed and fodder industry for Nigeria, which is estimated to be about 23 trillion as it is. You look at the poultry, you look at sheep, you look at goat, and all the others, they feed as you produce them. Now, the other aspect I would like to look at in this realm is to say that, what is the role of technology? You look at extension. A lot of youths are interested in creating a platform where you can just put information for people to access. Farmers can access it in different languages. So all of these issues are areas where the youth can play a critical role in enabling a new, modern, and viable agricultural system. And so for us, we realize that yes, if you need the agricultural sector to be transformed, you need to make it youth-centric, you need to make it innovative, and at the same time, you need to make it simple, but yet you have to also put in standards, you have to do grading, and all of these things are various things that you'll see. For example, when you look at food processing, ordinary, what do they call it, the Irish potato, for example, simply creating a line where you can wash, grade, and whatnot will change the narrative. So things like this, you look at post-harvest, there are quite a number of Nigerian youths out there who are working in the post-harvest sector. So all of these areas is the reason why for us in the agricultural sector, we believe we are going to be more focused on how the youth are going to be supported, how the youth are going to be empowered, so that at the end of the day, we are going to be able to get all the things that we drive the agricultural sector. Okay. You take a look at cooperative, for example, also. Cooperative is key. A number of youths, they have their friends cycle. These are all opportunities that if you can translate into creating a cooperative society can be just 10 people. And you have many youth cycles where if they take this opportunity, they can go into very productive ventures in the sector.
Okay, let me quickly ask you before we go back to Mr. Essien in Lagos. And this is the issue of security, because it applies to the agri sector as well. And Mr. President also promised to reform the security doctrine and the architecture, not just in terms of their numbers, but also in terms of training, welfare, and of course the equipment. And I'm wondering, are there metrics to indicate any improvement in this area? Coming from the agri sector, or is it too early to tell?
Well, I think the metrics here is to look at what is happening. The CDC, the CDS, the Chief of Defense Staff, was in our office to give us assurance based on the directive of Mr. President that the Nigerian military should do whatever they can to restore sanity in places where things have become difficult for farmers to access. Now, they are going to play that part on their own. But for us in the sector, what we realize is that about the agro rangers. So the agro rangers were put in place, and they were designed to support security provision in areas where there are seeming threat. And so this year, as part of because this is the first year budget also of the government that is now to be implemented. So as part of that, we are taking a look at the relationship between the agro rangers and how they are going to support the flash point, because it's not everywhere that this insecurity thing pervades. But those flash points, those areas, if you can increase the number of men on the ground, it will give farmers that comfort to go back. And this rainy season, we intend to maximize that, because like we said, our interest right now, the strategy now, is to see what can we do to increase production. And when we do, we believe it will begin to now clear some of the negatives.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have Mr. Essien back now? All right. Okay, Mr. Essien, while completing your thought on the anti-corruption drive of the Tinubu's administration in the first year, I want you to also examine some of the challenges faced by this administration and how it has been able to tackle them.
Yes. We had an incident with a minister is there. We had it with the minister perceptions that the right thing had not been done, and the government took a decisive step, and that was.
All right, we apologize for that. We are having some issues there with the connection of Mr. Essien. So let's come back to the studio now. Madam, Mrs. Oshikoya, I want you to speak to some of the challenges that you have noticed, in this administration and how government have been able to tackle them.
First, I think I work on the streets, I work with communities, I work with individuals, and we also collaborate with governments. And the challenges that the government of His Excellency President Ahmed Tinubu has inherited have been lifelong Nigerian issues. But I think every sitting government has the challenge of resolving issues. Nigerians don't want to hear stories. Nigerians are hungry. Nigerians want to have food. Nigerians need job. But again, the precursors to having job requires that you have skills and competencies. And then we have to find shortcuts on how to approach this. And that is why the domain of technical vocational comes in. Now, if you look at outside the way we like to separate and balkanize education into federal ministries all sharing their mandates, and the need, I think the major need now is whether it is skills that is provided by the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, or the ones that is midwife by the Federal Ministry of Communications and her agencies, or industry, trade and investment, or agriculture, as the case may be. I think it's understanding that in a result-based outcome, you want to look at things in terms of how many of these have we provided, how many jobs have we provided. And like the wife of the president, Her Excellency, the First Lady, had also said, is that if a child is confused about skills, it means we have not delivered that very well. But if you look at it, I love the fact that to those of us who have traveled to other countries of the world, Nigeria do a lot of tourism because we go to buy clothes. And so creating jobs is looking inward. Interestingly, yesterday with the Bangladesh High Commissioner, and we're talking about bilateral trade opportunities. So in refocusing Nigeria's attention into Nigeria, is these jobs we are looking for are going to be everyday jobs. For instance, the technical skills we are talking about, the 3 million technical skills, it doesn't have to be ICT in the extreme end of rocket science. It could be technical skills in terms of what applies to the woman in the market. How do I fix my sewing machine? And then education can become as rewarding if the child that is in school is getting paid for his apprenticeship one. But after saying all that, I think the connecting link for me, an area we could make a whole lot of all that, is standardization of skills. And that brings in again the role of the regulatory agencies, the National Board for Technical Education, and then of course the National Business Technical Examination Board. So whether it's certificates or certificates, they are the two ones. I can get rewarded and made to feel special because my skills have been graded and standardized, as in the case of Bangladesh and the rest of them. So if we look at the National Skills Qualification Framework, there's a need for everybody to sing that song, whether I am in any sector, once I am doing skill. And I tell the woman who drops out on the street that even though I have not gone to formal school, I don't need to go to technical. All I need to do is I have been sewing for 10 years. And if I am sewing for 10 years, I could actually come and go through an appraiser, a trade certification process. And that is, I think that requires a lot of collaboration. And again, collaboration also, most times when you listen to 1 year anniversaries, you will see government appraises itself, and we go so much to tell every Nigeria we have done well. It is good. But there is also the need for us to do a lot more of opinion polls. There's an assumption that every Nigerian's views has been carried, or it is the voice that is loudest. I think Nigerians want to be heard. And then this collaborative factor where the formal and the non-formal would come in. But above all, let's pay more attention to public-private partnerships. Let's pay attention to evolving Nigerian solutions to Nigeria's problem, a lot more of trade certification and standardization, and I think we would all get there.
So let's get the last word, and in less than 60 seconds from the Honourable Minister.
No, go ahead.
Okay, all right. We've been given more grace, yes, to continue. So, Honourable Minister, and I just want to stir the sum a little bit, because some critique have also looked at some of the monetary policies initiated by this administration under the CBN, and described some of them as elitist, especially when it has to do with issues concerning interest rates, and all the monetary policies that are supposed to address the issues of inflation and improve, the manufacturing and industrial sector. What are your views about that?
Well, thank you very much. I'm not an expert in monetary policy.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure if I'm competent to make comments on this. But one thing I want to say is that this government is looking at the macroeconomic environment vis-a-vis the aspect of the fiscal. And I think that has been an issue. And I recall even when we were in the National Assembly, when we had 2 recessions, it was one of the major recommendations we have given. And so within that context, in the agricultural sector, for example, I will tell you we are playing a key role in providing some modulation to support the economy. Okay. Because the government strategy of economic diversification is to say that Nigeria is massively endowed in so many sectors. And within that context, what can we do to bring back attention to our resources? And that explains why you are seeing the massive interest in bringing attention to the agricultural sector, for example, and even the solid mineral sector. And I think to that extent, I would say that rather than support a situation where we have allowed the agricultural sector in terms of our food system, for example, to go bad, as we are importing food, what we are doing is we are exporting jobs. So we need to ensure that our jobs stay here by getting Nigerians to work. They are very talented. Young Nigerians are very talented, very interesting. And I will tell you, we have a system now where we are scanning on a continuous basis young Nigerians that are showing interest in how to move the agricultural sector forward, and we are bringing them on board. And I will tell you, just yesterday, we had an engagement with some young Nigerians on the subject of cooperatives. And we realized that if you have so many cooperatives and you empower them through the various schemes we are having, you can imagine the economic contribution they can make to our economy.
You know why I asked this question? Is because of the connection between monetary and fiscal policies.
Yes.
Because under the immediate past administration, farmers had access to what they call the Anchor Borrowers Program, some of these interventions.
Yes, I don't want us to. You see, there are a lot of issues. That program had its own success and had its own issues, and we are reviewing that. And that explains why the president this time around has said the CBN should hands off the level of involvement. Because one thing that we saw when we came on board is there were so many hype about farmers. Many people who are not farmers came in and crowded out the real farmers. Part of the reform President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is bringing now is to say, let's focus on the genuine farmers. That way, when we say we are producing, we are sure of what we are saying. When we give you this figure of 118,000 hectares, we know it is. In Jigawa State, for example, when we did the planning, we allocated 40,000 hectares. But Jigawa State government, out of their own interest, were able to add 15,000. So at the end of the day, they ended up contributing about 55,000 hectares. These were genuine farmers. So this is what we are trying to do. And as it is, we are going to work with MBS and all the other critical stakeholders so that we are going to have a hold on the data that talks about who the Nigerian farmers are, what has been planted, the hectareage they are planting, and where they are located.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, Honorable Minister of State, Agriculture and Food Security. Thank you so much.
But one last shot, please.
Just
one last shot. When you talked about the president's interest, I think it's significant to recognize that he has said one single-digit interest rate should be made available for the media industry.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for chipping in that. Thank you. Also, we want to thank Honorable Rosemary Ojochenemi Oshikoya, former Kogi State Commissioner for Environment and Natural Resources, and many other caps that you are wearing. Thank you so much for your contribution today on Good Morning Nigeria. Also, we want to thank Mr. Oseni. Unfortunately, we're not SCN. We're not able to get back to him because of that. So we thank you very much. And that's Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Ademola Adeo. Thanks for joining us. Claire.
All right, I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak, but please don't go away. Our live studio will be open in a short while, and Fisai Ogunfuyi will be, of course, taking over from us, bringing you all the live inputs on this very important day, of course, the one-year anniversary of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But from us here in the Good Morning Nigeria studio, it's goodbye. Bye-bye.